Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Ready, Set, Smart webinar series, where we're providing weekly opportunities highlighting how SMART can provide a fluid workflow of blended learning opportunities to benefit students. We're going to show you how to create lessons and activities focused on classroom instructional strategies. My name is Beth Galanti, and I'm a PD specialist from SMART from Michigan. And this week's webinar, Stop, Collaborate, and Learn with SLS Online, features Sarah Stork, a SMART professional development specialist from Philadelphia. Before we have Sarah take over, I thought we'd run through just a couple of housekeeping items. So depending on which device you're using to be here with us today, you'll notice at either the top or the bottom of your screen a few options that you have for participating in today's Zoom webinar. So during the presentation, I'll be putting some links over in the chat. You'll see the little icon in your toolbar for the chat. And if you have any questions that you want to ask while Sarah's presenting, you can type those into the chat, and I'll either stop her to ask her right then, or I'll save them for the end because we'll have a few minutes for a Q&A portion. So also, for participating in today's webinar, a PD certificate will be provided for you at the end of the webinar. I'm going to put a link to a really brief survey to let us know how we did today in our webinar and how we can help you. And if you take that survey, it will provide you with a link at the end to claim your PD certificate. So at this point, I think I'll turn things over to Sarah so we can dive into today's webinar, Stop, Collaborate, and Learn with SLS Online.
All right, well, thank you, Beth, and welcome everyone. We're glad to have you with using Smart Learning Suite Online. So I will take just a moment to introduce myself. My name is Sarah Stark, Professional Development Specialist with SMART. My background was as an educator, so I spent about 11 years in the classroom teaching grades K through 5, but for the past few years I've been working with SMART and just really love being able to work with awesome educators just like yourself as they are implementing technology into their classrooms. So with that said, we will get rocking and rolling here. So we'd love for you to join today's live session, and what we're going to do is we're going to ask you to open up another tab if you're in a browser, or if you could open up a browser window. And once you open up your browser window, you open up another tab. If you could go ahead and navigate to hellosmart.com. And then you can go ahead and just join as a guest today once you go to hellosmart.com. And then my class ID is 12770. So we'll give everyone just another moment or two just to connect to our session. We'd love for you to participate with us today. So you can open up another tab if you're using a browser, or you're welcome to open up a new browser window if you're using the Zoom app. And you can navigate to hellosmart.com. And like I said, my class ID is 12770. You can just join as a guest today.
I've also put those directions into the chat for you as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Beth.
No problem.
All right, so just as a reminder, we're opening up a browser window or maybe another browser tab. We're going to go to hellosmart.com. You can join as a guest. My ID is 12770. Like Beth said, that information is going to be in the chat as well. So I'm going to go ahead and move on for right now. But if you need any help connecting to our live session, you're more than welcome to add a question into the chat if you need any support there. All right, so let's just take a look at our objectives for our session before we start our first activity. So during our time together today, we're going to learn how we can leverage teacher and student pacing during collaborative lessons. You have some pacing options when you're delivering lessons using Smart Learning Suite Online. So we'll take some time to talk about that, and you'll experience a lesson as a student. And then we're also going to talk about discovering some new ways to encourage collaboration using things like collaborative workspaces, response, and shout it out. And these are all tools that work very nicely if I'm meeting with my students during synchronous or live lessons. Now, these synchronous lessons could be in face-to-face lessons, maybe if I'm in the classroom with students. I could also be meeting virtually with my students if I'm using a platform like Zoom, like we are now. I could be meeting with my students live during a synchronous lesson, or maybe I launch my lesson and I have some students in the classroom, some students I'm meeting with virtually. So we're able to all work together during a collaborative lesson, even if we're not all physically in the same place, and you're gonna see what this looks like today. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is let's just take a moment to talk about what does collaborative learning look like and what does it sound like? So whether I'm meeting with students in a classroom or I'm meeting with students virtually, what are some things that I might see or hear or experience during collaborative learning? Now, right now, if you're looking at Smart Learning Suite in that student perspective right now, you're going to notice a couple things. One thing, when I turn to page 4, you probably noticed that your page turned as well. So as a teacher, I'm able to navigate or control the lesson. Now, I am going to show you later, I can turn this control over to you, and you're going to be able to navigate through the file on your own. But for right now, I want us all together at the same time so we can complete this activity. Second thing you might notice, that you have no way of adding any information to this page right now. It's view only for you. As a teacher, I could grab my highlighter. Maybe I'm going to highlight the word collaborative, right? And that's going to show up on your page, but other than that, there's not much else we can do. So on my end, on my teacher screen, what I do is there's a little people tab. I click there, and then I'm just going to turn this into a collaborative workspace. Now, I can split you into teams. We'll experience that later, but for right now, I'm going to have everyone be on one team. All right. So right here on this space, now you're going to see some tools. Would you please just take a moment, see if you could find that text tool, which is the capital A. Click on the page and add an idea. What might you see or hear during a collaborative lesson with students? So you can type a word on there, or a few words or a phrase. Now, also see if you can find, there's a little mountain with a plus sign. When you click there, you can do a quick search for some online images. So maybe you do a search for collaborative learning or students working together, and then you can add that image right to the page. So we'll give everyone just a few minutes now that we've started this workspace. And if you just add some quick ideas to start letting us, start thinking about what does collaboration, what does that look like for students? And again, we could be thinking in the classroom, maybe meeting virtually. So I see one of our friends that has joined us today said, student-centered. It might look like student-centered learning if students are learning collaboratively. Oh, this is fun. Maybe students working together to create, a human pyramid there. And then we also have a nice word cloud here. So these are some fun ideas.
Yeah, I'm thinking of collaboration. I'm thinking of those shared projects and productive noise.
Right. Sometimes I think, when I would have my students working together in collaborative working groups, that maybe, organized chaos sometimes where there's, like you said, Beth, that productive noise. You can hear students talking and engaging and building upon each other's ideas together. Now, as you can notice on this workspace here, we're all able to add our ideas together. So I see, some of us are using the pen tool. You could add some ink or highlighting. And like we talked about, you can grab an image so you can try experiencing this workspace and what this might be like for your students. Is right now you're in that student perspective because you've joined my class. All right. Yep. So it might be a little noisy, right? Even if we're meeting, virtually, we might be having some conversation, or maybe the chat in
Yes,
our,
the chat.
yeah. I like to use the chat a lot when I'm collaborating with colleagues too. We can add some ideas right in there. And then, that helps with that flow of conversation. Awesome. So we see some people working together, talking, having that conversation there. Well, fantastic. Well, thank you all for adding some of those ideas. This gives us kind of a nice base and maybe some key words. This word cloud here is kind of giving us some key words to be thinking about, as we continue on with our session. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the page right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to experience an example lesson that we could have students engaging in. Again, whether I'm meeting with students live in a classroom, I have some students who are meeting virtually with me, or maybe in the classroom, maybe I'm meeting with all of my class virtually. But this is going to be an example lesson on how we can use SLSO or Smart Learning Suite Online to engage with our students in a collaborative synchronous lesson. All right, so I'm going to start this poll, and it's going to have 2 questions for you to answer. So if you would please just take a moment and answer these quick questions. So I'll pull these questions up on my screen if you're just watching my screen right now. But if you're over in that student perspective, you can answer, I can be helpful in my community. So either you're going to say A, I agree, or B, I disagree. So you can just take a moment. If you think you can be helpful in your community, you can add agree. If you think, maybe that's a challenge for me, you would say disagree. So I'm using this poll as a way to pre-assess my students' maybe understanding of a new topic. We're using it to give you a little voice here to voice your opinion as to whether or not you think that you can be helpful in the community. When you're done answering those 2 questions, so your second question is, use 1 or 2 words to tell about your community. So right now, I'm actually seeing your words pop up as a word cloud. Think about that last activity, somebody popped a word cloud into our workspace. Well, right here in this response, we're able to create our own word cloud. So once you answer those 2 questions, I do encourage you to come back to the Zoom window. If you're looking at my shared teacher screen in the Zoom window, you're able to see how right now we're working together to create that word cloud right here. All right. So right now, I'm gonna show the live results as we go through and give everyone just another minute or 2 to answer the questions. So if I look at our live results, so here's our first poll question here. I can be helpful in my community. Okay, I can look at my bar graph, or I could look at our pie chart. Yep, 100% of us think that we can be helpful in our community. Wonderful. Now on the next page again, I'll just show you this page one more time. If you have a chance to come on and meet us over in Zoom, you can see that our group here, some words that we're using to describe our community: caring, friendly, influential, small, close, teachers. All right, so list view, we can see this as well. I can see all of your responses. All right. Now, as a teacher, one more thing that I can do, I am actually going to now end this activity, okay? And then I can end and review. So with my class, I can see everyone's names, how many questions they answered, okay? And then as a class, we can review the results easily here, and we can talk about your responses and break those down a little bit more. But I can also click this button right here at the bottom. It says export results. If I click export results, you're going to notice that downloaded right as an Excel spreadsheet. Now I can also use response to have correct or incorrect answers. We'll show you today how we can build this. This was actually a ready-made response and I just added to it. Okay, so we're going to show you how to put that together today, but it's just nice and an easy way to interact with my students in a poll in which I can see their responses. So you're going to see here on my screen, here's my spreadsheet, and I have participants' names and then how they answered and then those words that they contributed. So I just get that quick Excel spreadsheet. All right, Beth, is there any questions before we move on?
Well, just as you ended the activity and you were reviewing the results, someone had a question that, is there any way to show what you're showing on your teacher screen, these kind of whole group general results, to push those whole group results out to the students?
So that's
So, go
yeah,
ahead.
that's a great question, Beth. And at this time, so this view is going to appear on my screen. I can then have my students come view my screen over here and, whatever video conferencing platform that we're using. Or if I'm in the classroom, I can project this so that my whole class can see it. And I don't know if Beth, if you want to add anything to that as well.
Right, just that on when you're reviewing the question by question, that the students get to see their answers and how they did specifically on that question. And then if they wanted to compare that to the whole group, then just like you said, they could look at their teacher's shared screen or board if they were physically there.
That's a great point, Beth, that if you notice in your Smart Learning Suite window or tab, you were able to review your individual results, which if we were using this, as a poll, we can talk about, did you have the same answer as the majority of the group? Or if I have, if I set this to have correct or incorrect answers, we can compare answers as well. All right, I'm gonna pull us into the next activity. Now that we've started thinking about our community, okay, so now we're just going to take a moment. We have a rank order here. So we're just going to start thinking about, so in your Smart Learning Suite tab or window, right now you can rank some of these ways. How do you think you can help your community? So which ways would be the most important ways to help your community, and then rank these ideas down to the least important way to help our community. And we're gonna check in with you on just a moment because everyone just got their own copy of this activity, so you can interact with it. So right now, I am going to, as a teacher, I have my own version, okay? So I'm starting to pull over some of these ideas. I'm thinking voting is pretty important. Writing a letter might be kind of in the middle there. Watching the news, maybe less important. And this is all just my opinion. You have your own version of this activity. So you can rank what do you think was the most important to the least important. I'm going to kind of move that around.
I love how there's an option to not correct it so everyone can have their own opinion. Like I would have probably put volunteer closer to the top, but we can have this discussion now and really decide if, we want to switch them around or defend our answers of why we chose, what we chose.
Yeah, great point, Beth. I could ask my students to unmute themselves and, defend, why do you think planting a garden is the most important? Or, Mrs. Stork had planting a garden as the most important, but, like Beth said, she thinks volunteering should be a little higher. So maybe she could convince me, the teacher, to move volunteer up higher on the list, right? So we have that opportunity to engage in that conversation. All right, so before I move into the next task, could you, in the chat, tell us which way to help your community do you think was the most important? So can you just pop that into the chat right now? We'd love to get that feedback from some of you. And Beth, let me know, what are some of the things that people are saying in the chat?
Well, we already have 2 votes right away. That vote is the most important. I totally agree. Someone's saying volunteer, right? Maybe you're volunteering to help others go vote and helping others. Yeah, we are having some things in common in the chat about volunteering and voting.
Volunteering, voting, helping others. Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
We got a few more votes for vote.
Great. That's just wonderful. Thank you all for that feedback. I like how we're able to work together and give our opinions just right there using the chat. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to move us on to the next activity, and now we're going to break this down just a little bit more. So let me show you. Again, this is going to be a workspace. Right now it's view only for you, but if I click on the little person on my teacher view, I can turn this into a collaborative workspace. I think that let's break down into 2 groups. Okay, so I'm going to break us into 2 teams. It's going to randomly assign you a team. Now, if I think Jennifer might work a little bit better here in team 1, I'm just going to move her over here because I think that Jen and Jennifer and Aaron, I think that group is going to work a little bit better today. So I can move students around and make specific groups. So now I'm going to start the workspace. Now that we've started the workspace, team 1, I was hearing from our group here that I'm going to change this text a little bit larger. we heard that voting was going to be an important way to help our community. So team one, can you start giving us some ideas on what are the advantages and disadvantages of voting? All right, and maybe we only think of one and not the other, but let's add some ideas here. And maybe volunteering. Okay, so maybe we're gonna volunteer our time. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages of being a volunteer in our community? So team two, could you start adding some ideas here? Whether you're adding text or images, can you start adding what are some of the advantages and disadvantages? And I see team one has already found our check mark at the bottom.
Great.
That have a voice was a great advantage of voting. Great. All right, let's check in with team two. Okay, looks like they're still coming up with some ideas. What are some advantages and disadvantages? Maybe of volunteering to help others. So we'll check back in with you, team two. We're coming into team one. Oh, great. All right, so making a difference by voting, and maybe voting may be a disadvantage is if some are not able to take their time and maybe do research before voting, right? Okay, looks like we're adding some ideas here. Awesome. Oh, great. So team two, some advantages of volunteering. You might get some community projects done, take others' perspectives, and great, I agree. So I'm going to grab one of these check marks here, maybe helping get project done. All right, so I'm going to add that check mark right there. So, all right. Do we have any questions in the chat, Beth, as we're kind of moving along here?
I'm going to get one more person connected to your lesson, but other than that, we're doing great.
Awesome. Now, if you do pop on over to the Zoom window, I just want to point out for you the teacher perspective, since you're viewing this as a student right now. Okay, so as a teacher, what I'm able to see is both teams. I'm able to click inside both workspaces. I'm able to add some content to the page as well, so I can move some things around, all right? And then also I could add text or images to go along. So I can be collaborating with my students in real time. We can be meeting in a video conferencing like this, so I can set my students up in groups, but then they could continue to work on this throughout the week as well. One more thing I'll point out to you, when I'm working in one of these spaces, if I want to be able to just check who added each thought, so someone said have a voice, I can click on that response, I get a little drop down menu, and I can see that Jennifer said have a voice is an advantage of voting. So I can easily check in and I can see that student attribution as my students are working.
Really important.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move us on to the next task here. Okay. Now, what we're going to do on the next page is just give you a moment to add some ideas. We're going to just create a quick poster on how you can help your community. Now, I need a blank page for you to work on, so I have in the left-hand side of my screen, I have a little plus sign. I'm going to add a blank page and just click here. I've just added a blank page to our lesson. I'm going to click on the People tab, and now I can turn this into a collaborative workspace. Again, I can split you into two groups. I kind of want to mix up the groups a little bit because you were working with some people before, but now I really want to mix up those teams, so I'm going to leave them as they are. But here's the thing. You're probably going to want to go back and see those ideas on the advantages and disadvantages of ways to help our community. Or maybe you'd want to go back to the rank order and view some of those ideas that were available there. So I'm going to turn this lesson over to student pacing. If I click on the little person, I'm going to then turn it into student pacing. So now as a student, you get a message. You can go to any page in this file. So right now on that blank page, you can add text, you can add images, you can go back to my directions page and you can review the directions. Maybe I also had a rubric visible there for my students or some more detailed objectives. turn this lesson over to that student pacing so you can go back and forth between the pages. All right, as a teacher, I'm going to come in and I'm going to check your workspaces and see how we're doing. Beth, are there any thoughts or questions in the chat that we wanted to address?
Oh, we're doing great.
Okay, great. So it looks like we're kind of just getting started. I'm going to help out team 1 here. We're going to work together on creating our community poster. Let's see, I'm going to grab this image. Awesome. Great, we're adding those ideas about voting. Team 2, helping your community, volunteering, voting. Awesome. So our students are able just to work together in real time and create their poster to encourage others to help with the community. All right, great. So now let's just take a moment, since we've had a little bit of time to work together. Okay, I can use that student and teacher pacing to allow my students some flexibility throughout the lesson, so you're able to work through this poster on your own time here. But now, say it's time to wrap up our lesson and we want to finish out, we want to review, okay? I could ask my students to come back over to, say, a Zoom window here like this, so each group could take some time and share their posters. I could, if I'm meeting in the classroom, I could be projecting these workspaces for my students to see. But now I'm going to click on the little person on my screen here, my teacher view. I'm going to pull you back to teacher pacing, because now I want us to all be on page 9 together. We can review team 1's poster and we can review team 2. Just as a reminder, I can click on my objects, the drop down, and I can see who's adding content to the page, and I can see which students were contributing to the page. All right, now let's take a moment and kind of reflect together on how our session went. So I'm going to pull you down into our last page here. All right, so we're going to start a shout it out activity. I'm going to start this activity for you. Now think about how our collaborative lesson went today. I know it was pretty quick. We didn't have a lot of time to work together, but what do you think went well as we were working together? And what do you think maybe we could improve for next time? So you have a white box right now. In the white box, can you add a thought of what do you think went well while we worked collaboratively? Choose the category, what went well, and then press submit. Then add some thoughts, how could we improve next time on our collaborative projects today? And then submit your response. Shout it out. I'm able to, on my teacher screen, show you just really quickly just some ideas and thoughts, and you're able to brainstorm together. All right, awesome. So on your screen, okay, you were able to add your thoughts, but then if you pop back on over to my teacher shared screen, I can click on these responses and see things that went well. Everyone was able to put their images and they were able to move them around so they weren't hiding each other's thoughts. Our group was awesome at participating. We had a great participation. We had clear directions. Everyone had a chance to contribute. Participation, I'll agree. We had a nice group that really was willing to participate. Yep. We were able to give students some voice, right? Students were able to interact from their point of view. All right. Oh, students are loving to work this way using shout it out. Awesome. And now we can maybe incorporate some more ideas. Fantastic.
Sarah, we had a couple of questions come into the chat.
Sure.
How so many people have shouted out their answers to you. How are you able to just click through them like that instead of hovering to randomly select them?
That's a great question. So as a teacher, I can click on a response. And then at the bottom right-hand corner, I have some arrows so I can click through.
Yeah. I think this is just really important to include something like this just to make sure students have that time to reflect on the group work. And we really don't want to lose all that social time and that collaboration, even though some of us are farther apart.
Exactly.
I did get someone messaged me, and this, when you made this, this activity, this shouted out activity, was this a template? Are you going to show us how to make this?
I am going to walk you through how to make all the parts and pieces of this lesson. Yeah, so that's a great question. Awesome. There we go. And you know what? More time. I agree with everyone. I think that we could have used some more time. I was really enjoying seeing your ideas. All right, so now we've made it kind of through the flow of that lesson. And now I'm going to pull back the curtain and I'm going to show you how we created that. So if you are over in Zoom, you can see my view. All right. I'm looking at Smart Learning Suite Online. Now to get to Smart Learning Suite Online, I'm going to type in suite, S-U-I-T-E, .smarttech.com. All right, and then I'll be able to sign in to Smart Learning Suite Online. I'll be able to use a Google or a Microsoft account, and I can access my Smart Learning Suite Online or my SLSO account. Now, if you are a Google user in your district can also turn on the Smart Learning Suite app within your Google Drive. So if I'm in my Google Drive and I have the connected app, I can click on New, More, and I'll find Smart Learning Suite. That's the workflow that I'll take to start creating my lesson. It will ask me to sign in as a teacher, or I could sign up for a free trial. And I would use my connected school district account. But let's come back here. So my other option here is to go to suite.smarttech.com. I'm going to click to add an activity. And what I'm able to do is add content very easily here. Now, I can start with a resource like a notebook file, PowerPoint, or a PDF, or I could start with one of these other ways, like starting with a game-based activity. But I do have a PDF that I'm going to start with. So I'm going to click on Import Resource. It's going to pull up files on my computer, and I'm going to find my Fishbone PDF that we used today. So I just started this whole lesson with just a graphic organizer, and then we'll show you how you can add more content from here. Now here's my graphic organizer. That was a PDF. It's my Fishbone diagram. Now I wanted to add that check mark. I know here that I'm in my edit mode in Smart Learning Suite because I have the blue bar at the top. So now I'm going to click on my image tab here. It's a little mountain with a plus sign. And I'm going to do a quick Bing safe search for a check mark. If I had an image already on my computer, I could add it, but I don't have the check mark, so I'm going to do a quick search for a check mark. All right, great. I find it. I'm going to pull it out onto my page. It's a little large, so I can just grab the bottom here, make it smaller, and fit it into the box where I want it to be. Now, did you notice that when we use that check mark, we could grab as many as we wanted? I love to use something called Infinite Cloner so that students can have a little device to do some voting real quick. Maybe we're going to use it for text annotation, or maybe I can even use that Infinite Cloner as some manipulatives for my students to interact with while we're learning virtually. All right, so I'm going to click on the little drop-down menu here on my check mark, and I'm going to choose Infinite Cloner. Now, I have that little infinity symbol. We can grab as many of those check marks as we need, just really easily like that. But for now, I'm going to delete that check mark. Okay, great. So this page is ready to go. Maybe I would want to add the topic for my students before it was a workspace, but it worked really nicely in the flow of the lesson just to add it right there. Okay, so now my page is ready. I'm going to come to the bottom where it says Convert to Activity. You'll notice that I converted my page kind of on the fly while you were in the lesson. I was able to do that while I was delivering the page. But I can also set this to be a collaborative workspace while I'm editing my lesson. So I'm going to click on Convert to Activity, and I'm going to click on Make this a collaborative workspace. Now it's set up for my students to work in. All right, well, here where it says Workspace, maybe I want to add a title here so I remember. Community topic. Okay, great. All right, so let's keep adding. I'm going to click on the blue plus sign at the bottom left-hand corner of my screen. And here's that Add Content panel. Now, I'm thinking, did we start off with that response today, Beth? I think so, that we started off with that quick response, didn't we?
Yeah.
So I want to create that poll for my students. Now, that was a ready-made activity. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click on Ready-Made Activities, Questioning and Reflection. So I want my students to do some reflecting. Do you agree or disagree? It's right here. I can click to preview.
Super easy.
And great, it's already set up for me. Now, I'm going to click to edit because I did want to put the thinking prompt up here. I can help in my community. Okay, notice it's set as a poll and opinion. And then I want to add one more question. So I'm going to add a question. And this time, this was a short answer question. Tell about your community. And that's where my students contributed a few words about their community. Down here, I'm going to leave it as open answer because, again, this is and just open for my students to give their voice about their community. I'm going to click next. I could add some more directions, and then I'm going to click finish. All right, so right here in the title, I could change that, but I'll just leave it as it is. And again, I could click and edit. Now the response came first, so over here, I'm actually going to kind of drag and move this around so I can reorder. Our next activity, if I click on this blue plus sign here, was the game-based activity. We used a rank order. So I'll come down here to rank order. Again, I can click to preview, and I'll select this activity. So this is where students were thinking about what was most helpful and least helpful. So I'm going to write my category names here, my ranking labels. And then we'll add some ideas in here. So I'll just give them some quick ways to help their community. Maybe write a letter. Okay. Now, remember, you were able to sort this activity without having any correct or incorrect answers. So where it says check answers, I'm going to click on don't check. Because now my students can rank this in any order so that they can give their opinion. All right, now I'm going to click on next. I'll pick a background and I'll pick finish. Now again, I can change the name here. Okay, I could click to preview. Okay, great. It's set up the way I want it to be. Awesome. So now we have our 3 pages. We had our ready-made poll. We added our rank order. This was the PDF that we started with that became a workspace. And now we're going to add another page. Let's add a blank page. This is where we're going to add those directions. So my text box is right here for me. Directions, create a poster. And I could add some more information there. I'm going to click on this text box, click on the drop down. I'm just going to delete it. For now, I don't need it. I'm going to click here where the mountain with the plus sign. Remember, that's where we found the check mark. But this time I'm going to search for a picture of the community. And I'm going to drag that onto the page. And now it's set. This page was view only for my students, so I'm going to leave it as it is. It wasn't our workspace. Now I'm going to come down to the plus sign another time because we need to add another page here. Now, while we were experiencing the lesson, I was able to add that blank page, my whiteboard kind of just right in the moment. But I'm going to click here now, and I could just add a blank page in here as well. So I could click new page. So I have 2 options, right? This will have the text boxes, so I'm just going to click on this text box, click on my drop down and delete. Click on this text box, drop down, and delete. Now it's set up for my students. I'm going to click convert to activity, make this page a workspace, and again, I can change the name. Okay. All right, well, I do want to move this around a little bit. There we go. All right, and to finish out, we had a shout it out. So one more time, I'll come down to the plus sign. Click on shout it out. I can click to preview. Select the activity. Now I can use shout it out as randomized so I could have maybe one question that I ask my students and then they're contributing their thoughts. Maybe we're going to sort some ideas together. But for this one, I had categories. So I wanted my students to really reflect on our collaborative learning experience together. So what went well, and maybe how can we improve, or what could we think about, doing better next time?
Yeah, so this is how you got those 2 split sections for them to choose to answer both.
Yeah, exactly. Now, and I could set this for students to contribute text or images. I could give them maybe one more response, and I can show or hide students' names. If I click on finish, I will. I could change the name, but yeah, this is how I was able to create that quick shout it out for students. And that only took us about a minute or 2 to set up that activity. All right, any questions in the chat there, Beth?
We had someone clarifying whether you could use images and text at the same time in a shout it out. But right now we just have to choose text, or they can also pull an image from their device and then send images to maybe grab a real world example of your lesson or your focus.
Great, exactly. Maybe if I have pictures of my community, I could add that image there. But right, so I'm going to choose text or images, but think about that workspace tool that we were using. We can use both text and images. So depending on the purpose of the activity, I might choose one tool over the other. All right, great. Now my lesson is ready. What I want to do up here though is rename, because now I've completely changed with this activity. It's not my fishbone diagram. It's not that only anymore, right? I'm going to rename to community lesson here, so it's all ready to go for my students. When I click finish editing, I come back to my Smart Learning Suite homepage here. I can click to start the lesson or edit the lesson.
Sarah, I did have a question.
Sure.
Since it looks like you built that and it's finished and now it's sitting right here in your lesson library, someone had private chatted me a few minutes ago asking, like, all this building is so easy, but is there a way that we can share this for students to then work on outside of class?
That's a great question. Now let me show you right here. I'm going to just come in to start my lesson. I do want to point out that most of these activities work well during a synchronous lesson. So response, shout it out, I'm going to run that during a synchronous lesson. I'm going to set up my workspaces. I'm going to set up my teams during a synchronous lesson as well. But Beth, that brings us to the next point of, what if I wanted my students to continue working on their community poster, maybe during class the next day while they're working on their own, right?
Exactly.
Because we didn't have a lot of time to work on our posters, but I really think we're off to a good start. So what I can do once I've established my workspace teams, I'm going to click on the three little lines here, and I can grab a share link. I could share this lesson with another teacher. If Beth and I were both teaching our students about our community, then I could grab that share link and send that to her in an email. But what I really want to do here is grab the student access link, because then I'm going to press copy here, and I can copy that and paste it into maybe a learning management system, maybe an assignment there, or email it to my students. Now, you just want to make sure that when your students join your lesson, they sign in. I asked you to join as a guest today. It was just a little easier for our purposes, but I always have my students sign in. If they sign into their lesson, to your lesson while you're running it live, they go to hellosmart.com, sign in. Then once you share this link with them, they're able to come right back to their work and continue working once they've started in those workspaces. So that's just something important to keep in mind if you try a lesson like this with your students.
So they can get right back to the spot that they were working on before, right?
Exactly, right. If you join as a guest, your work does not save on your end. I, as a teacher, will see the work you contributed, but you won't be able to come back and continue working. So I usually just have it a practice. We'll have my students sign in. And they can use a Google or a Microsoft connected school account.
I saw something else in those three dots underneath share about make a copy. Does that actually make a copy of this entire lesson?
Great question, Beth. And actually, if I click there, I will get an exact copy of my lesson. So if I'm teaching multiple sections, I might want a copy for each class. So in just one click, I can easily create a second copy. You see it's processing that right now. And now I have my second copy. So cool. Also, before I turn pages into workspaces, I actually like to make a master copy of my lesson, just in case I need to go back and make some changes. I'm always kind of reflecting on how lessons go. So sometimes, in response to that, I might make a change before I deliver the lesson maybe to another group or for the following school year. So sometimes I'll make a master copy of my lesson too before I convert pages to workspaces.
Great.
All right, so we've kind of taken that walk through on how we can create that lesson there for our students. I'm going to come back to our original file here, and I'm just going to pull this up because we're going to kind of wind down our time today. So We do want to give you just a big thank you for joining us today. And I agree with everyone who said that we really participated well today, because everyone who was with us today just did such a nice job adding and collaborating together, even though we were all learning in many different places. So if you'd like to continue to try SLS, so after today, think about using, just one element that we talked about quite a few things today, but maybe you would want to think about using a workspace with your students, or try one of those ready-made response, polls that, or little quizzes there that you can add. Maybe you want to try to shout it out with your students, or maybe you want to try using that student versus teacher pacing to help your students work together during a synchronous lesson, kind of give them some of that flexibility. We're also going to share with you in the chat some resources, because again, I know we covered quite a few topics today, but this page will link you to the link that Beth is going to put in the chat. Is going to take you, you can check out our Smart Learning Suite Teacher's Guide, Smart Learning Suite and Google Guide. So if you do have a Google connected account to Smart Learning Suite, your workflow is slightly different. So I would just highly recommend checking out that Google Guide. There's the link to some follow up if you want to check out any more of our Ready, Set, Smart webinars. And we have a Google one in particular coming up, and then some other great ideas, so how you can engage your students using Smart Learning Suite. And then if you want some more resources on using blended learning with Smart, and then if you're a Microsoft Teams user, we do have SLSO integrated in there as well, which is pretty cool. So something else to check out. We also like to connect with you on social media, so please feel free to connect with us there. We always enjoy seeing your ideas, and tag us on #SmartChampion if you have a cool new idea that you're trying with your students. All right. If you're interested in becoming a Smart Certified Educator, or Smart Certified Champion, or Smart Certified Trainer, this is another link we'll provide for you right now, just until the end of the month. Right now, they're 40% off all certifications, so I highly recommend you check that out as well. The few days we have left in August. But thank you again so much for joining us and spending some time with us today. We'll take a pause here. If we have any other questions, we'll kind of wind down our formal session, but if we have some questions, Beth and I are going to stay on to address those. But thanks again so much, and we look forward to connecting with everyone through social media.